apologize for my voice. I'm still not 100% healthy, but I'm getting there, and I really want to be here today. I am going to be operating with 3 different things: a clicker, a microphone, and my notes. I only have 2 hands. Let's see how I can manage. This morning I want to talk about what I've termed here everyday trust. And basically all this is a call to not forget local governments and not forget individuals in all of our talk about, how do we make institutions trustworthy and how do we get people to trust them. So it's really just a call to say, hey, let's not forget the little person and local governance. So many years ago I started out studying pilgrimage, and I spent a good deal of time working with the concept of religiosity. And like other attachments and feelings, religiosity is notoriously difficult to measure. You can measure how many butts you have in seats at a place of worship, but besides that, you can't really measure much else apart from asking each individual person. But then they might have different reasons for that declaration of faith. And so since I was studying pilgrimage at the time, I recall kind of what the great anthropological husband-wife duo, Victor and Edith Turner, said that pilgrims vote with their feet. So in other words, we might not be able to understand exactly the intentionality behind someone's choice for an act of pilgrimage, but that choice, we can read some people's attachments, kind of what's important to them by their actions, by taking that first step on the pilgrimage. So similarly with trust, apart from asking individuals about the trust they hold for various institutions, groups, we should be able to see kind of artifacts of trust or trust indicators from people's actions and words. So then what does trust look like? So apart from these declarations of individuals, where can we find it? So I was kind of inspired by this approach to looking at the nation and being part of the nation. There are many scholars that kind of look at what they term everyday nationhood, but one of my favorites is a formulation by John Fox and Cynthia Miller-Idris. We talked about it's the practical accomplishments of ordinary people engaging in routine activities. So it's not just these giant macro-structural forces, that everyday individuals are a big part of kind of reproducing our attachments and our understandings of being a part of some group, whether it is a local community, whether it is the nation, whether it is something much broader than that. So when they look at it, they talk about it in terms of the nation, and they talk about 4 specific things that you can look for: talking the nation, choosing the nation, performing the nation, and consuming the nation. So in talking the nation, really we're just talking about the way that the nation is discursively constructed through everyday interactions. Choosing the nation, how everyday decisions can be nationally framed in some way. Performing the nation, how symbols, symbolic gestures are performed and interpreted. And consuming the nation, how our own preferences, our own tastes can be kind of in some way linked to a national differentiation. So we can look at this in many different ways. We could say the same thing for the local level, we could say the same thing for the regional level, we could say the same thing for the supranational level, and just for the sake of argument here, we'll talk about in what ways do we say that we are talking Europe, or choosing Europe, consuming Europe, performing Europe. I was going to be on a panel that was focusing more on Europe, as you can see, but still relevant here. Okay. So we might not have too much time to look at this, but I want you to kind of remember this in your head when I'm talking about everyday actions, everyday performances, everyday words. So national attachments and supranational attachments, in this case, do not have a zero-sum relationship. So contrary to the messages that we hear many times from media and many in the political realm, it doesn't have to be an either-or situation, an I win, you lose, a connection to the nation state or a connection to Europe. There was a bunch of research done in the early to mid-2000s, Emmanuel Castano, also Duchesne and Favier, and they looked at local, regional, national, and supranational attachments. And what they found is that having a high level attachment to one does not preclude having a high level attachment to another. Two really good examples they found in 2004 in Poland. Most people expressed a very high attachment to Poland and Polishness, and at the same time a very high attachment to Europe and Europeanness. Conversely, in the Netherlands, it was a very low attachment to national identity and a very low attachment to supranational, to Europe. So we can see highs and lows and lows. But the two things that this research pointed out is, one, it's not a zero-sum game, but two, yeah, there are conflicts sometimes, especially between these adjacent levels. Maybe there's some sort of competition over decision-making. In an extreme example, we could be talking about a movement for independence or greater autonomy, and we see there's tension there. So one of the suggestions they make is, well, we need to activate local and regional perhaps, because we can have local and supranational being strong, regional and supranational being strong, we can have local and national being strong. It's just when we put the two together, if there's a conflict, there can be a little bit of a problem. So we need to work at a smaller scale. So, back to ordinary individuals and trust. How is it possible to get people to exhibit these indicators of trust? This talking, performing, choosing, consuming. First, we must ask, what produces trust-indicating behavior? Is it transparency, efficiency, fairness, or efficacy? Or is it simply earned through evidence of trustworthiness? Or maybe it's just simple faith that we're putting in. Trust is about expectations. Expectations based on our perceived connections, our attachments. Yes, it's also about attitudes and preconceived notions. It's about experience as well. But the thing that I want to talk about here is building attachments and connections and how that can be important. So, in this idea of incentivizing individuals and municipalities to become partners and stakeholders, there's a couple things here that are important. One is, so yes, we need to find ways to activate individuals and communities. You don't just kind of let people do it on their own. You don't just say, we're going to be transparent, and people will say, that's wonderful. We're on board. So we have to find opportunities where we can activate people, where trustworthiness can be demonstrated. And in doing so, we have to think about individuals and kind of small levels of governments as partners, not necessarily clients. We need some sort of reciprocity also in there too, which I'll talk about in a second. Also stakeholders, and not just bystanders. Not just kind of looking at what's happening in the news as some sort of spectator sport, but feeling that we're part of it in some way. So, kind of a case for this incentive model. So in one way you could say that, yes, this is just kind of a call for a bottom-up approach, but I think more importantly, I want to open up the question of how we can establish or reestablish trust. If we're going to provide enough experiences that will allow people to give their trust, we're in for a long haul. So we have to find some sort of shortcuts, and I feel that kind of attachments and connections can be one of those shortcuts. So I thought it might be interesting to bring in some examples of incentivized trust from Scandinavia. That's kind of my context. That's where I've been teaching for quite a while. And I wanted to talk about Scandinavia for a couple reasons. One, because Scandinavian countries exhibit particularly high levels of social trust and institutional trust. And I don't want this to sound like I'm perpetuating the myth that everything is wonderful in Scandinavian countries. Nothing could be further from the truth. There are many issues and problems. Some of the things that we'll talk about work well, some of them don't work well. But I just want to kind of get the ball rolling with some examples. In the Scandinavian countries, one of the big prerequisites for trust in society that a lot of political scientists talk about is the fact that, well, people were predisposed to trusting the state before the welfare state was developed. I believe that this is kind of a myth. It's kind of through everyday interaction with the state on this kind of municipal level in Scandinavia that trust is maintained. So it's not really transparency, but it's the illusion of transparency in a way, as many scandals in Norway and just recently last week in Denmark show that it's more about just placing faith than actual transparency. So, bringing in Scandinavian examples, and also something that is, what's that? I will in just a second. Also, I thought one of the things that is kind of shaking trust in a lot of institutions is the questions of immigration and integration. So I thought I'd bring in some examples from that as well. So the first is not something that actually takes place in Scandinavia, but it is something that is done by the Norwegian Refugee Council and the Danish Refugee Council. There's a program that's been started, mostly funded through European funds, where people who are in a situation of being a refugee, and most refugees, of course, do not live in refugee camps, but they live in urban areas, usually in countries adjoining their home country. So what the NRC and the DRC have been doing is been giving people cash, not getting together resources, food and clothing and other things, but simply giving people cash to make the decisions for themselves. And what this does actually is it reduces the amount of money that they're spending on it, because the amount of money that they give is actually less than they would spend on buying the items, shipping the items, storing the items, guarding the items, supervising the distribution of the items. So they're saving money. And also, there's this idea of cash and dignity for people who are in a refugee situation. But beyond that, and the thing that's, I think, most important in the level of trust here, is that the society that is hosting these individuals now sees these people as potential consumers, potential laborers, possibly neighbors. They're not undermining the local economy. They're supporting already existing local businesses. Now they have more customers. So this idea of not undercutting local communities, but finding ways to support them. Also, along the same line, another thing that they do is fix people's houses. Do you have a garage? Do you have a basement? Do you have an attic that needs fixed up? Well, we're going to come in, we're going to make it livable, we're going to fix it, it's going to look great, on the condition that you host some people who are experiencing a refugee situation for 6 months, a year, or whatever. And after that, it's yours to do what you like. Use it for your growing family. Rent it out to make some additional money, whatever the case may be. So finding these little incentives for people to take a chance on trust. This is an example that comes directly from Norway. In Norway, the Refugee Resettlement Program resettles individuals who are accepted asylum seekers or holding refugee status in pretty much all municipalities of the country. And it's kind of a forced resettlement in a way. It's decided where you're going to go. One of the things that they do in this program, is get municipalities to feel like they're partners. So a lot of times it's not a politically popular decision to host people who are coming as refugees and asylum seekers. So then how do municipalities make this happen and get people to support it? Well, what they do is the state offers money for the municipalities to house and support all of these individuals for Norwegian language learning classes, society learning classes, job help, all of these things. And what it does is it produces an awful lot of jobs in every municipality. And the municipalities and local people are very excited about the prospect of a lot of new jobs. So that's one thing, that's one aspect of it. The other aspect is municipalities get to keep all of the extra money. If they're successful at integrating individuals, i.e. getting them into the labor market, the municipalities keep the money to build that new playground that they wanted to build. And it's something that everybody can get behind and get excited about. Last example here is what's called the Introduction Program in Norway. So this is a 550 hours of language learning and 50 hours of social studies that everyone who comes as a refugee or an accepted asylum seeker goes through, also some other individuals as well. In this program, it is a program based on what they term rights and duties. Some people say that this is a very good program, some people say in some ways it's a little bit cruel. That's kind of beside the point here, I just want to give the example. People are paid for their attendance. So you show up, you actively participate, you are paid. And what this does is it wins trust in other people in society, that people are actually putting in the effort to become a part of society, part of kind of the cultural community, part of the political community as well. So it's adding an incentive. So I believe I'm kind of running low on time here, so I'll just say I'm not offering a roadmap here. I just wanted to give a couple examples, a little gentle nudge to look at not just increased transparency, efficiency, cleaning up political discourse, because there's only so much we can do with political discourse. A kind of consensual democracy is not doing really well at the polls right now, so we have to look elsewhere. And we have to make people feel like they are stakeholders and feel like they are partners in the situation, and that they're getting something out of it as well. So, thank you.